those of you who don't know, and I think I know nearly everybody here in the room, I'm Christine O'Malley, and Eleanor's asked me to do this, the welcome bit, and introduce Donal. So you are all very welcome here. As you might expect, being an Eleanor book event, it's a somewhat eclectic collection of people. I reckon we have local, literary, and lake. So you're all very welcome here, and it's just lovely to be here. So thank you, Eleanor, for bringing out a book, because it allows us to get together in these difficult times. You know, isn't it wonderful to be able to have a party? Okay, it's going to be a more low-key party than it might be otherwise. But anyway, I'm not here to introduce Eleanor. Donal Ryan will do that. My job is to speak about Donal. And Donal is also a local man. Most people here, I think, already know a lot about Donal. He's a local man who writes about local things and in local language. And the official biography goes something like, Eleanor sent it to me, like he graduated in law from UL, he worked as a civil servant, and then moved on to lecture in creative writing in UL. He's written 6 best-selling books. He's won multiple awards, Irish awards, European awards, another one we mentioned in a moment. He's also been longlisted twice for the Booker Prize. Wow. Yeah, he's been nominated for the Costa Award, the Impact Award. Have I forgotten anything there? I think I've covered this list there, right? Right, okay. But I think, like Donal's stories, the really important bits are the little bits in between. And when Donal was working as civil servant, he was a labour inspector with the National Employment Rights Authority, which sounds quite mundane and probably wasn't actually. And it reminded me of Einstein, who many of you know wrote some of his best-known papers while working in the patent office in Switzerland, and went from there directly in to become professor of experimental physics, theoretical physics. And Donal, of course, went from being a labour inspector to being a lecturer in creative writing. So I think that's quite a nice parallel. The other thing about Donal's book is that he's been translated into 20 languages. You know, yes. I was just thinking that Donal is the kind of writer who gives people hope. And I'm sure many of your students have said this to you, Donal, because it's very well known, I'm sure Wikipedia does not lie, that Donal's first 2 books were rejected 47 times before they got published. But the thing is, once he got published, once he found a publisher, he found an audience and immediately began winning awards. Irish Book of the Year. So it's lovely that we in Ireland recognised what we had immediately. And in fact, in 2016, his book, The Spinning Heart, was voted Book of the Decade in Ireland, which is, again, just a wonderful tribute. Make sure I don't forget anything else. So he's been translated also into 20 languages, which is kind of remarkable, because when I first opened a Donal Ryan book, I really got very excited. Because I'm a Dubliner, and I worked in hospitals in London and Dublin. And when I came to Nina Hospital, I was really struck by the way people talk, the language they use. And when I opened Donal's book, there it was, the people that I know from around the town and in the hospital wards, and the way they spoke, it's actually captured there on the page. And it really was like, oh my goodness, this is it, I know it. And that's a very hard thing to do, to capture those little tiny things. Because when I try and tell people how people in Tipperary speak, it's not Ireland, it's not Tipperary, it's actually Nena. It's very local. So imagine them being translated into 20 different languages. I don't know how they do it, but they certainly did do it. And some of you who were listening to the radio the other day may have heard Donal speaking on Morning Ireland, because he has just won the Jean Monnet Prize for literature for a translation of his book into French. So it's wonderful, Donal, to welcome you here, to congratulate you on that wonderful achievement, and to ask you now to speak to us about Eleanor's work. Thank you.
Thanks a million for that amazing introduction. I don't deserve it at all, I really don't. It's so great to be here among friends and family. Hi, Gillian. For Eleanor's launch. Because I think every poet, every novelist wants to be a poet, and every poet wants to be a poet like Eleanor Hooker. She's an amazing person. Actually, when I got the email from Eleanor about this launch, I happened to be at home in Nina with Ma'am, And I opened the email and said, oh, Eleanor's having a lunch and she wants me to speak at it. And Mum said, you better do it! I didn't say anything. Of course I'm going to do it. Because she also was a huge fan of Eleanor's work, and of Eleanor, of course. And it is terrifying, actually, to speak about poetry as a novelist. And because, you know, we novelists are daubers with language, but poets are the people who really use it properly. And as a novelist tasked with trying to do justice to the work of a poet such as Eleanor Hooker, I had to, in cowardly fashion, turn for an opening to the words of a far greater novelist, William Faulkner, who seems to have been as stumped as I was when it came to articulating the ineffable magic of the poet's work. He said, "It is the poet's privilege to help man endure by lifting his heart, by reminding him of the courage and honour and pity and sacrifice which have been the glory of his past. The poet's voice need not merely be the record of man, it can be one of the props, the pillars to help him endure and prevail." Eleanor has created this new collection, a pillar to help all of us endure and prevail. Embedded within these lines of this at once delicate and monumental work, encoded for posterity, is moment after moment of wisdom, generosity, and saving beauty. What is your advice? Eleanor asks the honeybee as poet, and the honeybee answers, breathe every breath, regard the echo under siege. It repeats the code. Leave distinguishing marks, forget to miss, startle empty corners with song. There is a name for every type of pain, but also for every fragrant flower. Elect your nomenclature. Listen to him laugh as you drag the devil by his tail. They're fighting words, and this is the work of a warrior, a writer with no fear of the battleground of our terrible, complex, destructive, glorious humanity, a writer poised, primed, attuned to the singular frequency of the forgotten, the occluded, the abused. This poet feels beneath her feet, the quote, the bodies of 10,000 naked sorrows bump the ice, hold their infant breath as they flow away from Erin and her bishop. Our dim, formless understandings of ourselves are here sublimated into wonder and beauty. The ciphers we use to give meaning to this incoherent existence are made here into music. Eleanor coaxes from language the chords that chime with the deepest parts of us. We are as the subject in the poem Mending the Light, for whom thoughts are clipped wings that cannot fly, but who at the poem's end climbs into her boat to row toward a patch of joy. At times I stop reading and put this collection down and ask myself, how must it feel to have written something so perfect as this? And when I got the book first, actually, I said, okay, this is Eleanor's new collection, and so I know whatever page I open, it'll be beautiful. And I opened it randomly on page 36 in this poem. Listen to this. Down. Tumbling. You grab fistfuls of light before reaching the fells. Your mind is filled with goose down, clusters the size of dandelion crowns, and soft as lanugo. You think, I won't make it out alive. You set down the light you stole from the sun, but realize you were decades of dark time too late. Can you hear me? Are you still there? Climb through a tear in time to find yourself in the roof of the world, a sky woman come of age. But as this is the season for departures, you let go, fall through frigid, vacant air. And I had to stop there. And you know what? After the first poem, I think this is going to be at once a joy and a hard task. To read prose poetry is beautiful, words used so elegantly. Because it makes you wonder about language and its possibility. Of course, not my page up. Okay. And at times I pause my reading because I found myself turned, gently but insistently, by Eleanor's poet's voice and her nurse's hand towards wells of sorrow I find difficult to contemplate. In the poem, Eating the Earth, Eleanor tells us of a patient in intensive care. Clutching his leg, his elderly sister runs beside the trolley, cries, hold on, Polly, you'll be grand, hold on, love. He's moved from the ambulance directly to us in intensive care, mud and grit round his mouth, and in his sea green eyes, ghost ships sail into view. As he struggles and fails to catch their mooring lines, his sister knew enough to make him eat the earth. To check the fires rising inside him, weed killer burning life from his every organ. I coax him to eat the fuller's earth has prepared to put out remaining pyres. He calls me Missy, apologises for the trouble. He holds on. As we undress him, farmyard falls brown from his boots. We admire his sister's darning, his elbow, and over his heart, parsing his fob watch for the safe. Stop time. Soon his voice sings of loneliness and incessant rain. When all that's left for us to do is take his pain, we do. And when he says he didn't really want to die, we hold his hands, listen. And when all that's left for us to do is lay him down to rest, we do. He sleeps beneath the earth, a clay blanket over his bleached bones. And I stopped again to consider and bask in the hope that Eleanor evinces through her heart-lifting insistence on beauty, her unwavering belief in goodness, the undying light of wonder, of love that shines through her eyes into ours. In Christmas flight, this question is asked. Will there also be singing? Yes, there will also be singing. And be assured that celestial body, our sun, will heave her coals daily above the horizon, her dawn ablaze. My love, our world has not ceased to enchant. These are songs of water, songs of earth, of bees, of womanhood and motherhood and childhood, of friendship, of the dead and the living. These are songs of departure and songs of home. There is Gartmore, Drummond Harbour, Dromina. Here is Drumaneer and the curve of Yahal Bay. There, in her son William's dream, is Eleanor's friend George, coming up the lane from Rinskaheen, drawing a black case behind him. Eleanor Hooker, nurse, mother, lifeboat helm, and one of the great poets of her generation, takes on her shoulders the burden of lives not hers, helps them to endure and prevail. With her gift, she sanctifies them and saves them. Eleanor, we're all in your debt for the gift of this collection. It's my privilege to be here to speak of it, to read aloud its gleaming lines, to hold it up, and to commend it to you with all of my heart.
Wow, thank you so much. I think I'm going to go home now. Wow. Thank you, Donal. And thank you, Christine. I'm not getting an Oscar, so I just go through the thank yous very quickly and I'm going to cry. James Harper, who edited the book with me and had a great sense of humour, when I explained some of the poems to him, he said, that doesn't work. And then he said, okay, I think it works now. For Pat and Raphael at Dedalus Press, for Aoife Lynch, who's the social media manager and the admin, she's been amazing. And for the Yacht Club for this beautiful premises, and for you guys for coming out tonight. Thank you very much. People ask me all the time, why do I write? And I try and give them explanations for that. But so in Ireland, I know, Declan, you know this as a beekeeper, the bees are sacred beasts. Even in the Brehon laws, they were protected. And there is a tradition that if a child is stung by a bee, that it's lucky and that it will be a writer. And it's more of that, your child got stung by a bee, how lucky it is. No, that's not how it works. But that's a long way of coming around to say why I write. Self-portrait in a honeybee's eye. The epigraph is from Robert Bly, Words Rising. We are bees then, our honey is language. Now the honey lies stored in caves beneath us, and the sound of words carries what we've forgotten. Self-portrait in a honeybee's eye. In the version my mother tells, one hung in the still air, hummed above my crib, its saddlebags yellow laden. She shooed it, she says, but not before it tasted my lip. And that is why, my mother says, I am chosen to wheedle with words. I recall the curved fur and my infant reflection repeated in its compound eyes, how it hung in the still air, still above me. And when it landed, the secrets that tumbled from its saddlebag drove into my lip. And that is why I speak messages from the other world to this. It is why, when in my honeybee coat you cannot know me, but grasp the sting deep inside me may eventually kill me. And as I tremble from flower to disguise, lost in a copse of words, I hum who I am. As Christine said, I come from a huge family, but wonderful family. And last year, our elder sister Margaret got sick, and I wrote this poem for her. The quicken tree, or the rowan, every part of it is said to have medicinal and magical qualities, and I love the rowan tree. The quicken tree, from Olly Griffin. Berries bloom across the landscape of your body, ripen to purpura. The physician says petechiae, says blood words that snag the thin winter air. I have sown a rowan inside me, nourished it in my woodland bones for 200 years. Its berries bud at my fingertips, red blistered. An chéadló de bhealtaine, do bhí bhreithe, ag an déachach géimtine as chuirhan. And I will crush my flowers as a cure for you. From my flushed berries, stir a brew for you. I will pestle and water my leaves for you. Add spice and light scented sticks for you. From my wood, I will carve a settle for you. From my bark, I will dye my eyes for you. For the quickened tree is a hoary charm, and quickening its sap and store. This year is the 700th anniversary of the death of Dante, and Dante wrote that masterpiece, The Divine Comedy, and 70 poets from around the world were invited to write poems to respond to the Paradiso, the Inferno, and the Purgatorio, and I was one of the 10. It's a huge honour, and I'm going to read them. They're a little bit angry. This one, in Dante's Inferno, the ninth circle of hell is a place reserved for traitors, and in Dante's time, Ugolino, who was a politician, was said to have betrayed his community, and Archbishop Ruggieri encased him in a tower, sealed him in, and he with his children, and they all died, they all perished. And in my poem, forgive me, but I put Archbishop McQuaid down there, and I have Aaron as an allegory for Ireland, and in also knowing at his head in the same way that Ugolino does to Ruggieri. Inferno, Aaron and her bishop. 9 times down I walk the frozen lake, where to fall is to fall through. Eternally east of me, my heart, stopped by snow, feathers my flight. Conscience is my guide, and constant my unfaith inspired holy huts. I walk the frozen lake 9 times round, where to fail is to fall away. And then, sounds of this dead world carry the wind inside its desolation. In speech lies our stuttering origins, and there is Aaron and her archbishop stoppering the ice, she grounding his bony crown, glubbing clotted sap, and him drivelling, his grace is displeased, his grace is displeased. When she senses me, she leaves off her frenzy. He sold my children, she screeches, spitting jelly brain, and those he didn't sell, he starved, and those he didn't starve, he buried in his bowels, oh fetid burials. Her own betrayals are stones that damn her eyeless sockets, and when a tempest fetches groans to stay her torn mouth, she returns to her gnashing. Beneath my feet, beneath the frieze, bodies of 10,000 naked sorrows bump the ice, hold their infant breath as they flow away from Aaron and her bishop. I think this one is sort of self-explanatory. It's Purgatorio, and it's a raven's elegy. A lifetime I have watched the dead pace the perimeter of this walled garden. Now I pace with them. We trace each stone in the high walls of purgatory. Perhaps our child is nestled here, or here, or here. This morning, the dead cluster in one corner, a flash of frightened light against the furthest wall. We hear it, the earth's laboured cry where she is cut and dug, a lament she has toiled for eternity. One presence attempts 3 times to take my hand, and 3 times her hand falls through mine, uncomforted. Strains of a raven's elegy rises from our throats. Our chorus is the earth's cry where she is cut and dug beyond the boundary walls of this garden, whose sanctity is our tomb. We hear the swaddle drop and hear the earth catch her breath as each stilled birth is unfolded to her breast. For long may she cradle them, we beseech, before the descent, the pandemonium. And I'll read parody, because so many of us have been taught to be good now because you get rewarded in the next life. And you know, the thing is, be good now and be good now. Heaven might be right under your feet and you may not see it because you're so busy, trying to acquire wings. Get over it. Paradiso, obeyed in which the soul becomes shadow. Light-seeking brambles have narrowed the path, and though the woods are bared yet to their bone, birds draw back the canopy to drop spring song like heaven's cloth to coat and comfort all and none. She has stepped through me and taken my shadow. I hear her moving about in my mind, and it is true, nothing is ever forgotten if one of us remembers. She pins old photos to trees, so the woods dream my life, whilst I dream in forgetfulness. And when she fills fresh flowers with sound, they open their throats to laugh, to fill the air with every fragrance, every colour remembrance dyes. The lake lifts her grey chiffons to the land. She invites us closer to reflect traces of ourselves. I am the shadow owner, and my sole companion, my shadow. With the sun rising its echo in water, and dusky sounds compelling the dawn, we are absorbed in the moment, having no thought other than from the presence of joy, and as with instance of joy, and as with instance of love, or joy recalled, heaven is in the heartbeat and solid beneath our feet. Okay, will I read just 2 more and then let you off, lads? You're very good. Friday night, listening to poetry. Are you mad? My godmother, she was, you testify to this, she was a gas woman. I remember when I was, hey Brenda. I remember when I was going to have a child, she said, "Are you going to have painkillers?" And I said, "No, nothing." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, and she said, "It's a crock, take everything they throw at you." But anyway, she was a woman with attitude. So this is in letters from my godmother. "My dear, don't park in the sea. The sea is tidal. Don't park in the bog either. Time is gravity, and its colour is bog peat. Trust me, the only thing to die should be your hair, and when occasion merits, your eyebrows. There's no glamour in a corpse. Dearest Nell, the square root of the we of me is a pretentious aphorism. Don't. Never agree to the invisibility clause. Struggle to find a foothold, then let go. Stray the right side of volubility. If you don't think, you shouldn't talk. If you've nothing to say, say nothing. Silence is a scream. Ignore the sticker on your new knickers that reads, soft touch. Gardener's delight is a type of tomato. Darling girl, of course a duck's quack echoes. Now try saying that whilst drunk. Dear Nell, People who ask, is the devil economical? How long is string theory? Is this the last place God made? Might not be your friends. Let your letters be to friends, not posterity or your biographer. You're correct. I read her. Avoid green ink. What's the 3-letter acronym? CRU. I forgot to say where the exits are, but you're a trapped audience, and I'll finish on this one. Because it's, I do a voice. Okay, it's called, Jeannie Dominic is an American artist, and she's an amazing artist, and she and I write back and forth. She'll make a painting and I'll make a poem in response to it. And actually, talking about Jeannie, I have to talk about Veronique Pacarou. This has been videotaped, but she thinks I speak fluent French. But I write in English, Peter translates it, and then I send it, which is a bit of a lie, so I haven't owned up to that yet. So she sent me a message and it was urgent. So Google Translate helped it, but I couldn't write back. Well-worn wings, and thank you very much for coming. You're brilliant. Well-worn wings are to Jeannie Dominic. That cabinet in my mind, where I put the things I'd rather not consider, is almost full. Row upon row of stones stacked behind the vast yew doors collapse in on themselves daily, like bones in a graveyard. The cabinet sits above high water, in a back room named Unutterable. I didn't name the room, and don't know who did, but I'm conversant with its synonyms. The creature that guards the room is not an eel or a turtle fish. It just is, and occasionally is not. Where I trace the damp blue walls, a soft mould chokes the paint with my impressions. This room is a dark and broken sea, where disturbed waters drown time. I catch sight of my well-worn wings, their hooked veins patched blue and green, old wounds. With effort, they wrench me from the water's pull, settle me on a rusty pocone protruding from the wall. Nearby, all my birds, obsidian and raven, call, what, at the question of my unsettling. I unfeather back to the rachis. I pluck quills from my shoulder bones until, dismantled, I am back at source, flightless, woman, and unutterably sad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eleanor. Thank you, Donal. Thank you, Eleanor, again and again. And thank you, audience, for being here, for being such a good audience, for being here tonight, for this very special moment when Eleanor's baby is her third child. No, sorry, how many children now? 2 boys and then how many books?
3.
Two boys and 3 books, so 5th child. It's launched on the world. Unfortunately, we can't have the real part. We can't wet the baby's head.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, COVID rules. Yeah. So all we can do is stand around and chat, and then I checked the beat in the pub, and we are allowed to proceed up the pub and actually walk in the door and have drinks up there if we want to. So thank you all again for coming out tonight, and thank you again.